I could see how it could happen without the partner even realizing it. What is worse, an emotional affair or a physical affair? It depends how you define an emotional affair. In my opinion, an emotional affair is when you start to develop genuine, romantic feelings for someone who is not your partner. It's more than just a crush, and it's more than just physical attraction. Kissing isn't always involved. A physical affair, again, just my own opinion, is when it's purely physical, without any feelings involved. Someone is just bored, and wants to try something new. They may still love you, in a way. Looking at it like this, I reckon if your partner is having an emotional affair, the physical aspect won't be too far down the road. So to answer your question, 100% physical would be worse since that is the overall objective. Somebody replied, it doesn't always turn into a physical affair. This happened to me recently. Let me first state that I am the single one. I started a new job and a co-worker started giving me ridiculous amounts of attention. I don't easily like someone, but he was so intense, looking deep into my eyes, holding his gaze, watching me from a distance, all the time. Extending conversations, taking so much time training me, etc. I found myself being so drawn into him and I was so sure feelings were mutual. Turned out he had a girlfriend. Once I found out, I took a step back, tried not making much eye contact. Sooner or later he broke up with the girlfriend, but things got awkward between us by then and nothing happened. He later got back with her. I do my best acting normal at work now and talk to him about work-related subjects like I do with everyone else, but he is still so awkward with me after like 5 months. He not only confused me but confused himself too, I think. And last thing I needed was being led on, only to be left disappointed and lose trust again after the 3 years of healing I just went through. I do feel sorry for his girlfriend because she definitely got emotionally cheated on. My significant other had a purely emotional affair with a girl he knew from when he lived in Australia. We live in the UK. I have written about this a lot on here, probably as part of trauma processing, but they had been messaging about how they were soulmates and would do anything to be together for a year. I definitely wish he'd just engaged with a random. That's a mistake that can happen in the heat of the moment. It's awful, but I know people who love their partners and are good people who have done that. Going on Facebook every few days to declare your love for someone and pretend your partner who you're talking about moving in with doesn't exist is premeditated and narcissistic. Sometimes the original relationship isn't bad, you're just intimately bored. You know every position, every look, every whatever. Someone propositioned me with this rationale. You've moved to best friend territory and away from being lovers, and there just isn't any tension there anymore. I mean, it's still wrong to cheat. I think people just rationalize the cheating by saying it is unavoidable if you still want your best friend and physical affection. I mean, this was before open marriages going mainstream. You spend so much time in your day-to-day life living a difficult one with all the logistics. You have no space for the fun and relaxation of the honeymoon phase. I guess it doesn't mean you don't want to do that hard stuff with your best friend, it just makes it less likely that you'd want to engage with the same enthusiasm. There's a certain amount of realism. I mean, marriage is a very romantic institution. In my opinion, emotional affairs are worse than physical ones because they are more intimate. With an emotional affair, you are slowly falling out of love with your partner and moving on to someone else. It's those little moments that you remember, like talking on the phone for hours or finding peace and solidarity in someone's company. You crave them for who they are as a person. I think a lot of the time the person they cheated on was their backup plan for stability, or otherwise something to be jettisoned when the time is right. For me, a cold discard is way worse than an inflamed breakup. Even hate or intense arguments are still passion in a way. Sometimes those people get back together, whether it's a good idea or not. But coldness is killer. It's definitely what hurt me the most compared to irreconcilable differences that were revealed through conversation. I also think of an analogy where I left a terrible job not that long ago. I wanted to write a goodbye message to management so at least I didn't ghost them. Every time I thought about it, it was passionate, about me wanting to detail all the ways they messed up and how I can't stand it anymore. But in the end, Because the process was dragged out and even more bad things happened, I settled upon a pretty cold and short goodbye compared to the paragraphs I had originally agonized over. By that point, I had come to the conclusion that they so didn't give a shit about anything I had to say, because if they did, we wouldn't have been in this situation with me openly, but not incessantly, complaining for months and then just finally breaking. I really got the vibe some of them knew how bad it was, and if they didn't, they were incompetent to the point of absurdity, but didn't care so long as the money came in. So internally I said, ignore them, they don't deserve more of my passion and energy. And it so happens I found out a month later the business went under anyways. My wife and the mother of my children had an emotional and a physical affair. If I knew she just wanted to have intimacy with somebody and she realized it was a mistake and it was hurtful to me, I could have forgiven her. And in fact, if I never knew about it, we probably could have stayed married. However, I think when an emotional affair occurs, it's basically you giving yourself emotionally to another person, and that is a complete deal killer. I tried to get past it for years, but I just couldn't in the end. For these reasons, if I had to compare the two, then I think an emotional affair is worse than a physical affair. A reminder from me, TTS AFK. Don't tolerate either kind of cheating, you are better than that. For me, the physical affair is worse. Partly because of just the actual acts involved would stay in my head, and partly because my views on intimacy within a relationship is a unique display of intimacy, closeness, and vulnerability would be shattered by a partner physically cheating. An emotional affair is also terrible, but depending on how one defines it, it feels more understandable. Like I could see how it could happen without the partner even realizing it. So much of what would constitute an emotional affair with a person isn't much different than the relationship one might have with their platonic best friend. Simply put, a line gets crossed when it becomes physical that cannot be explained away or justified. Neither of those are acceptable. But I think an emotional affair is worse. It's a lot easier to accept that person was hot, I just really wanted to hold them. But when it's an emotional one, it's I care about that person and got close to them and put their needs over my actual partner's needs. That is so much worse than just engaging with some hunk. I was a real butthole about 20 years ago, and I'm embarrassed to say it. I was in a relationship with a woman several years before I met my wife. She wasn't perfect, but she was generally a good person. She wasn't meeting my needs emotionally or physically, so I started seeing two other women at the same time. Neither of them meant anything to me. I feel like such a dog for doing it. I should have just been upfront with all three of them, but I wasn't. I've been happily married since the day I met my wife, and I haven't even thought about having an affair, but I definitely regret what I did to those women emotionally before I met her. I cheated both physically and emotionally, and I know the question is which is worse, but I honestly think they're both equally bad. I'll take that regret to my grave. I've apologized to all of them several times when I was in therapy, but even so, that's just not enough. Affairs are bad in every single way, and there's no way to undo them. Yeah, emotionally hits you in a deeper way, but in a weird way I'd be more fine with it eventually. I'd be sad, yeah, but then I would keep it moving. At least it's on some deeper level and not just giving up the physical side to anybody, like everything you have put in the relationship didn't mean anything. It'd mess me up, but if it was the other way around, I'd want them to understand if I truly loved someone else. I'd come around a lot sooner than later, like, well, you can't help who you love. Rather than questioning, for God knows how long, why and how easy it was for them to let some random do that to them. I'm not sure, I may be weird, but this is how I would take it. Somebody replied, I would argue for the contrary. I want to trust my partner, and I would accept more that I had emotional shortcomings that were fulfilled by another person for my ex-partner, than just hearing that they couldn't keep their pants on because there was a hot person. Of course, emotional intimacy is super important, but to me physical intimacy feels much more easier to maintain. That it makes me hate that my partner wouldn't keep at least that up. It's not always easy to find the right person for your emotional needs, and it's not easy to explain to your partner why you lack those traits, so in my mind it makes more sense that they'd seek another person if this was the case. Of course, this perspective changes if they're trying to hurt you by just emotionally cheating, and they end up gaslighting you and making you feel bad for just existing. That'd be the worst of all affairs, if you can even call it that. Physical affairs are better for me because there's no gray area. I think it's possible to start going down a rabbit hole and get really deep into an emotional affair without realizing that's what you were doing. If my partner, when confronted, was able to accept that's what was happening and cut that person out, I could give them the benefit of the doubt and accept that they made the proper amends. Physical affairs are much more cut and dry. Everyone knows what the red lines are that you shall not cross, and it takes a very deliberate action to cross them. There's no coming back from that breakdown of trust. In my experience, women will generally find emotional affairs more offensive, while men will generally find physical affairs more offensive. I've seen affairs, unfortunately, twice in my life. Emotional is worse. I say this because this is the point where the victim knows something's wrong, and now, every waking minute, they worry. They overthink. They blame themselves and others. They're a wreck. If one catches a physical affair, it's as easy as ending it then and there. Emotional takes months to years to pull the band-aid. Somebody replied, exactly. Plus it's much easier to hide and forget about physical affairs than emotional ones. The if I don't tell them they'll never find out can often be true. It might even be a, what they don't know cannot hurt them situation. The emotional one, however, you'll notice your partner pulling away or catching them in little lies without doing anything wrong or different. It can make a person go crazy. Is it my fault? What did I do wrong? And the one having the affair will be torn between feelings for different people and feeling ashamed. Or the exact opposite, they'll gaslight the fuck out of the other person to make them feel it was all their fault. It leaves a lot more damage long term. I think physical is worse. To be very honest, there was a time with my current partner where I felt like I was falling out of love with her. I had been talking to a long-time female friend and started to feel romantic feelings towards her. I never voiced these feelings, but even so it made me feel guilty whenever I talked with my girlfriend. I started to feel withdrawn from her, and it all came to a head at one point when she told me things felt off and she wanted to break up. We were going through a long-distance period due to COVID, so all we really had was talking. I immediately felt horrible. The breakup completely snapped me out of my withdrawn phase. I'm sure I was also going through some kind of isolation-induced depression as well, and all the old feelings for my now ex-GF came flooding back. A month later, through sheer luck, we were physically reunited in the same city. We got back together after another month of being around each other and are both very happy and in love. Feelings may ebb and flow, but if we choose to act on those feelings, there's a finality to them. I explained my emotional distance to my GF and we were able to talk things out and get back on course, but I know she would have no space for me in her heart had I followed my feelings and gotten physical with my friend who I had become infatuated with. So for the record, physical is worse. Physical. Every time. Here's why. Assuming that either would be the end of the relationship. An emotional affair means that they develop love feelings for someone else, and from my experience that doesn't happen intentionally maliciously. It typically happens over time and will feel like it's out of their hands. Love cannot be forced or fabricated. We cannot control those feelings. However, a physical affair, and we are assuming one without emotional connection, is your partner doing something intentionally harmful to you just for intimacy. Just for pleasure. Just for fun. We are in complete control of who we have that with. However, worst case scenario is both happening at the same time, and honestly, you rarely have one without the other. This question always reminds me of reading about a psychological experiment where men and women were told to think about certain situations and then their levels of anxiety were measured. The results showed that men usually reacted more strongly to thoughts of physical infidelity from their partner, while women reacted more strongly to picturing emotional infidelity and loss of commitment. The general theory is that men are more sensitive to physical infidelity because it historically leaves them questioning the paternity of their children. Up until recently, a man's confidence in his biological fatherhood was only as strong as his trust that his mate wasn't sleeping with other men. Women don't have to question their relation to a child, they always know for certain. Conversely, women are more sensitive to emotional cheating because historically they've had to fear raising a child on their own because the man they were seeing left. Intimacy has always, especially historically, been much more risky for women, who might suddenly find themselves in the midst of a life-altering, or life-threatening, pregnancy, so it was much more important to find an emotionally committed guy that's likely to stick around and help. Reading all of these has been difficult. I discovered that my girlfriend of 7 years was cheating on me in messages that started on Reddit and then moved to WhatsApp, etc. I could always sense that something had started to change, but I figured I would respect her space. It has absolutely broken me. It is a wound that will probably never heal. How can someone do something like this? Somebody replied, just keep in mind that it probably was never about you. The thrill of someone new can be so alluring that they forget about how it might impact you. It's all about how it makes them feel, and it's a high that they might go very far to keep. All the while thinking they can have their cake and eat it too. You were stable, familiar, and she might have even loved you while she was doing it. But that is absolutely no match for the thrill and potential of a new relationship once they have allowed for it to come this far. NRE, or new relationship energy, is an extremely potent drug. It generally lasts for 6 to 18 months or more, and that is plenty of time for the old relationship, the one with you, to feel like it has less excitement and for the other one to seem more alluring. And in the meantime it is slowly failing and you don't know what you did wrong. Am I excusing what she did to you? No. Was she wrong for allowing it to get this far? Yes. But no, if she allowed it to come this far, it can be next to impossible to come back from. And it is not your fault. I went through something similar myself. 6 years of relationship where I was broken because I felt like something was going terribly wrong, but when I suggested therapy she didn't think it was necessary. But I still couldn't shake that feeling. And it turns out I wasn't wrong. Now, close to 18 months later, I have learned to give it a place and put it in perspective. But it took quite some time and a lot of reflection on my own and with friends to do so. And it is still a sore spot for me. Find a therapist to talk about this. It helps you deal with it. Good luck. Thank you for watching. I appreciate the fact that you enjoy my videos. Let me know in the comments which you think is worse. And remember, if anybody cheats on you in any way, you deserve better.